Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Academy, and this is Rupok here. Today, we are going to quickly learn about centralized configuration and configuration management in Spring Boot, how we can do that. Along with that, how we can dynamically refresh or update the properties in runtime. So let me just elaborate a bit on that. Sometimes what happens that in production, suppose already there is already a microservices deployed and it is holding some properties, and there might be a need to update some of the properties. And what 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 generally happens that we update the property beforehand and we deploy it in the server, and then the service needs to be restarted. Okay, so entire deployment process, even uh, for the slightest change in the configuration that we need to do. But Spring Boot offers a concept called Spring Config Server, which holds the all the properties for all the microservices, which acts as a repository, and you can do profiling as well into inside of config server. And what you can do with the help of Actuator, you can refresh your configuration. You can reload your configuration without doing any deployment. So runtime only, you can make this change without the overhead of redeploying or restarting the server. So there is virtually no downtime for your application. And when you think about it in industry, it comes really handy. Okay, so let's going to create two microservices. One will act as a config server, and one will be acting as a config client. The config client is nothing but a microservice which leverages config server. It can be anything, like you can think of it as a user service or an inventory service. Okay, so let's first create the config server uh, from Spring Initializer, and when Java 3.5.6 is okay and Java 17 is also okay. And let me add some dependencies. First is config server over here. The second is actuator. Third is dev tools and web. Right. So let's check it out the configuration for the config server. Let me name the microservice, which is config service. Okay. Let's quickly generate it. This is our config server. Let me create another one, which is a config client. And this is a config client. And here, the thing is okay, except instead of config server, we're going to have config client. Okay. And let's quickly generate this as well. Okay. So now in our repository, in our local machine, we have two services created. So I'll quickly take it into a file over here and quickly extract it. So first I'm going to extract config client. I don't want a nested folder to be created. So config client is done. Uh, and config client is done, and then config service. Okay. and extract all service config services. Yeah, basically, so we do have this path where we have all the our microservices. Well, let's get into IntelliJ, and I'm going to create a new project. Open up here only. We'll trust this project. Yep. Okay, let's open again. Then and refresh. Then this button. Trust structure. Yeah, it's all the projects are ready, so I will load it in my system and automatically it will build. So let's build the services. Sync is finished. All projects again. It is in sync. So I will build it. Before that, I will first configure the config service. So let's do this. And I import name source service. You look into the config files. I will make the config server to run in port which is in 888. Okay, and I'm going to add another couple of properties also, which will activate the properties for the our config client. Properties are these one. So basically, this explains that the native profiles is going to be activated for the config service, and all the configs for all the uh, config clients will be stored into this location. It can be anything. You can configure a Git repository location as well. So I will quickly make this uh, directory as well over here, which is config. And inside that config, I will create two properties. Okay. So one property file would be config client dev dot properties, and another one is file config client dot utility dot properties. Let's create some messages over here. So welcome dot message, and let me give a dummy message like hello from India, and same config I'm going to add over here that hello from China. Okay, so whatever we have done the configuration. It will done in 83 ports. We'll activate the native profiles. Well, it will follow the native profiles, and it will fetch the configurations, the config values from the our class paths config folder. One more thing we need to do, we need to enable the config service. So enable, we need to add an annotation which is enable config server. This will enable the config server. Okay, now quickly let's start the config server. Let's see how it is starting or not. So again, I'm going to okay. So if I go to config server, this is the application, and we can make it run. Okay. You can see successfully the server is running into port uh, 8888 port. Similar way, we're going to configure the config client as well. So in config client, again, we are going to update the properties first. So this is the application of properties. Again, I'm going to add a couple of properties over here as well. So this one and this one as well. And let's make the first pointed to the dev profile. So what it will done, it will do, it will run the service name would be config client only, and the same you can see the same client, the same naming convention have been used in the config server as well. That it should start from the application name of the client, and it will run in the 8080 port, and it is pointing to trying to import the configuration from the config server which is running into this port. Okay, and we're enabling the refresh as well. This particular property is enabling us to refresh. We can refresh the properties of that particular service. Okay, now quickly I will create a controller. So I will create a class quickly, which is here client controller. Okay, and I will quickly annotate it as a rest controller, and I will create a API which will just give me a, a message. So I'll get an API. So add get mapping. So, get mapping message slash message, and I will then let's just stick to the basic string get message, and what it will return a message. On the message we can directly take from whatever we have from the config server. Like we have a set of message into a config server. So let me pull that out. So what we can do, private, we can use environment from Spring Boot env, and we can auto add, and from environment we can get property which will give like welcome dot message. Okay, let's quickly validate the this properties also. Config service type property which is in the config, which is welcome message. Yeah, this is welcome message. Okay, now going back to the controller. Another thing that we need to do, so it will return the message. Another thing we need to do is we need to add an annotation which is refresh scope. So that annotation will tell the Spring spring that this particular bean is refreshable. That means it will allow the dynamic update or dynamic refresh of the property. Okay, now let's run this application now. So we will run it with the help of host client this application, and I will run it. Uh, Then you can go to the log. You can see this two lines. It is saying that it has been able to fetch the profiles, whatever the profiles have been defined from the config server. Okay, and one profile is default, which is the default for the application, and one what you define for another for is dev. Okay, now if I uh, if I go to a browser and type HTTP double slash localhost zero zero slash message. It is saying hello from India. Now quickly if we change the properties of here, which is to make as UAT, and let me restart it. Again, it will fetch from UAT, and if I just gone to the browser refresh it, you will see the values are getting pulled from the profile of UAT. So now you understand how the profiling is being done. Now, coming to the next part, how we are going to dynamically refresh it. Okay, so consider that it says that UAT file is being changed in configuration to in config server. Okay, so we go to config service, we go to UAT from China without from China. We are going to refresh with Australia for the UAT. Okay, now please note that the config client is still running. Only the config service is getting updated. Okay, the centralized repository. Okay, now we're going to restart it, the config service application with this change. Yeah, you can see this is changed. Now, if we refresh the config clients, uh, all the properties that we can that we have changed into the config server. For that, we need to make a API call to the actuator refresh API, which will refresh all the properties. It will pull out all the properties and update it, which is marked as refreshable, which is under the refresh scope. So if we run it, so you can see that that particular property we have changed only. Correct. And if we go to the browser, if I just and it has been changed to the new value, which is Australia. I have observed that there is no downtime for the client service. Only the config service, which doesn't have any dependency, it doesn't have any business logic. It only acts as a repository only. So virtually there is no downtime for the all the client services, all your microservices only. That is a huge power to the business owners, technical owners to have that kind of configuration into their ecosystem where we can virtually eliminate the deployment time or downtime. Okay. Uh, I hope that you guys really like this video, I will definitely upload the code snippet to the Git, and I'll keep that repo link in the description as well. Please do subscribe to this channel to get more videos. Apply, hit the bell icon as well, and keep inspiring me. Keep telling me that where I need to improve, what kind of content that you want to see in a comment. Okay, thank you very much. Till the next time.